So what are the arguments about money? So again, we've sort of been, sorting out the arguments for these different areas. And the reason we need these arguments is, the argument for making these arguments is, you can't just set up something and expect people to jump to it if they're already set in a culture which doesn't want to do that particular activity. So, as we've established, most social movement chapters will have these chaotic meetings, and no one really knows what the agenda is, and no one knows who's running it, and you don't know what's happening on Thursday because you never got the email, So, you say, no, here's the agenda, here's the structure, here's the coordinator. And the reason we have that, in other words, the argument is that enables people to feel empowered, because people need structure to be empowered. They need to know what's happening. Okay. So this final sort of cultural challenge, as you might say, is about money. So this might not be so much of a challenge for some people, I don't know. I mean, in the UK, it feels like it's a bit of a challenge. But the basic argument is this, is if we want to create a social movement, if we want to save our children from starvation, we need to build a mobilization which is massive. So that's the main point, as we've made several times. What does that mean? It means we need money. We need money because we've got to get people places for travel. We need to pay people. If some working class mother wants to become a full-time organizer, she's not going to be able to do that, without some funds. So if we're going to have an inclusive movement, we need to pay people to do things, particularly if they're poorer or from a marginalised group and what have you. There's no point going, we're going to organise these people. You need cash so that they can pay for their babysitting, so they can pay for their rent. Otherwise, you end up with a middle-class elite sort of movement, because it's only, retired middle-class people that can, work full-time. No problem with retired middle-class people, that's great. But what we want is a diverse movement. How do we do that? Is by enabling people to come in from lots of different social backgrounds, and even when they need money, they can get paid. So you've got the travel, you've got the whole central XR situation, which is, if you're going to have a social movement, you need to have, there's some fundamental things that are high skill that you need to pay for, like social media, tech, media work, administration, management, human resources, regenerative culture, whatever you're going to call it. All those things need to have a national presence so they can be sort of standardized and quality controlled and what have you. And those people need to work 50, 60 hours a week. Let's not beat around the bush on that one. And they're going to need some money. So the great sort of argument here is no, we're not going to an NGO situation, where, Roger Hallam's the main man or something, he's getting like, 200,000 a year. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't. I'm being paid like a basic income along with everyone else, because that's the culture of the movement. But if you want me to make these videos, basically instead of weeding carrots on my farm, then you're gonna have to pay, my mortgage for me and money for my kids. All right. So in other words, the argument is we're a middle way. With a lot of these things, you'll probably notice the argument is to say there's a middle way between two unattractive extremes. So one extreme is, totally voluntarism, loads of people doing work, but, not being able to get to scale because you haven't got the specialist sort of concentration of resources and what have you. Or you have this like top-down NGO, we'll tell you what to do, just send us $5 a month and we'll save the world for you. And with big executives on, loads of money, going to see politicians and all that business. Okay, so when you're making the argument, you're saying that's basically why we need the money. And so the next argument area is, how are we going to raise the money? So what arguments are we going to make here? The first argument is, like, if we don't want to rely on billionaires, and if some nice billionaire comes along or sees this video, that's cool, give us some money please. But we don't want to rely on billionaires or rich people or big funders, because implicitly, not necessarily, but implicitly, there can be, political influence, right? And that's often like subliminal. You're thinking, well, maybe we shouldn't do that or say that or do that because, it's going to affect our funding. And as the argument is, a lot of social movements, or particularly NGOs and charities, they basically start thinking about their funding more than actually achieving what it says on the tin, which is why they get corrupted and people don't like them and what have you. So we don't want to do that. So what do we want to do? We've established we need to make money. We've established that the billionaire sort of class is not necessarily the way to do it. And so that means, how do we get the money? How do we get the money? By the sort of age-old way, which is everyone pays who's in the movement. So all the social movements in the past, with anti-slavery and, women's rights, suffragettes, civil rights movements, basically the social movements become self-sufficient by raising their own money. And the main mechanism of doing this, and this is very easy in a sort of modern age, is by people giving a monthly donation or a subscription. That's the sort of word we use in the UK. I'm not sure what it is around the world, but the basic idea is you go onto a website and within 1.5 minutes you type in your name and address and your bank account details, and you press the button and you can give $5 a month or 10 or 20 or 1,000, and what that means is XRA gets a regular income, which is predictable and secure, because generally people won't cancel their subscription. And so the culture is, when we go into groups, when we set up a group, we go, look, we're going to set up Kentucky, Swans, fantastic. And then there's a criteria. When you're signing that agreement, you're signing an agreement which says, okay, Kentucky Swans want to be an official XR group. Fantastic. What does that mean? We want to be the same as all the other groups around the country. Okay, guys, if you want to be setting up this group, you will need to do X, Y, and Z. And also, we need 10 of you to give $100 a month. That's an average of $10. I think it's going to be $12, $120 a month. Anyway, something along those lines. And we're going to say, okay, the 10 or 20 of you in the room get together. Everyone says how much they're going to give, and if you can't give anything because you're really in a horrendous financial situation, no worries. If you can just give a little bit, like $5, that's cool. But between you need to make up that $100 a month. So when you've got that group around you, then people might go, well, I can see some of you are hard off. I've got a bit more money. I'll give $25 a month. I can do that. And then you get up to that dream scenario of getting your $100, $120 a month. Tick, that's that criteria sorted out. So the argument is that this movement has to be funded by this movement, and everyone has to give what they can and as much as they can. And it's not like just a weird option, if you see what I mean. And why? Because without money, we can't mass mobilise. If we can't mass mobilise, we're not going to get thousands of people into Washington. If we don't do that, then we're not going to be able to sort out this beyond terrible situation. All right. So those are the arguments, I guess, around that. I've done a sort of script around a sort of a bit of a pep talk to people, because obviously every meeting that they have, there should be a compulsory section in the meeting. I've argued it should be the last item but one. If it's the last item, everyone's rushing out the door. So it's the item before the last item, which is, okay guys, is there anyone who hasn't paid their sub yet? And someone might say, yeah, I haven't paid my sub because I'm really hard off, but I've got a little bit more money now, or I believe in it a little bit more, so I will pay my $5 a month or whatever. Or there'll be other people who are new and going, oh right, I didn't realise, everyone needs to pay a little bit of money. Okay, so how much is that? Well, it's $10, if you can afford that, or $5. Or if you're a bit more well off, then, if you can give 25 or 50, we need loads of money to do this mass mobilisation. And say, oh right, okay, yeah, well, I haven't done this before, but yeah, I'll pay my $20 a month. I think that's fair enough. I'm doing this for my grandchildren, that sort of thing. So that's embedded in the culture. So those arguments that I've just mentioned are really important to actually get into people's heads that this isn't a free lunch, right? When you come into an XRA space, the expectation is, unless you're really hard off, then you give your little bit. And we've done some mathematics, and you can produce the figures for people if you like, in terms of the argument of saying, if every group gives $100, $200 a month, then that will pay for more mass mobilizers, which set more groups, which will pay for more mass mobilizers, which will set more groups. So you've got this like positive feedback loop. You have to explain that one. And that means that within a year or so, or 6 months or whatever it is, then we've basically got thousands of groups around America and we can get the job done.